Greetings all, it's time for another episode of Ask Jason, where today I'm going to answer all your personal finance questions. And I'll do it totally unscripted, giving you hard-hitting, to-the-point answers to your financial questions. I'm Dr. Jason Kabler from the Celebrating Financial Freedom blog and the Celebrating Financial Freedom YouTube channel, where I teach you all about how to manage your money better, get out of debt, make more money, and do it all from a common sense and Christian perspective. To go to the blog, just go to celebratingfinancialfreedom.com and click the Get Started button on the main menu, where I'll show you how to get moving in the right direction with your finances. I'll leave you a link to it in the show notes. And while you're there, you can also sign up for my free 10-day Master Your Money email course. It's absolutely free, and it'll show you step by step how to take complete control over your finances. I'll leave you a link to that in the show notes as well. All right, now let's get on to the first question. So our first question is from Allison. And Allison asks, please, can you help? I'm having a problem budgeting because although as a total I have enough to cover my expenses, in reality I never do. My problem is that I have 4 incomes of differing amounts that are paid at separate days of the month, which makes budgeting an absolute nightmare. On paper, I have the money, but actually don't always have it at the time the bill falls due. So Allison, let's unpack that a little bit. It can definitely be tough to manage your money when you have a variable income, and especially when you have multiple sources of income coming in. I have that problem a little bit myself simply because my income can really vary quite a bit from month to month, sometimes as much as 50%. That's just the nature of my business. But the great thing, I'm very fortunate in that even in a very low month, I can cover all my expenses. So I don't have to worry about that so much. But unfortunately, a lot of other people have the problem that you're having. The bills just don't fall on the right days. You've got enough to pay the bills, but they just don't fall on the right days to coincide with your paychecks, especially when you have multiple sources of income like that. So it can make managing your finances pretty frustrating. So let's talk about how we can overcome that a little bit. So the first thing you need to be doing is you got to be doing a written budget. Now that can be kind of difficult doing a traditional type budget because they're more set up for, let's say, a biweekly or even a monthly income. And that can be a little difficult to navigate with that kind of a budget. But you can do it. You can do your budget a little bit differently to compensate for the variable income that you have and for the different paychecks coming in at different times. So here's how that kind of budget works. It's actually very simple. So the first thing you're going to do, you're going to list out every expense you have for the month from top to bottom. And it's going to start with the biggest needs that you have, the most important needs that you have. And that would be things like food, shelter, healthcare expenses, things like that. And move on down the line to lesser needs. For instance, transportation expenses, gas for the car, insurance, and on down the line all the way to more of the wants type stuff. Like going out to eat for dinner or having a budget for some Starbucks coffee every once in a while, things like that. So, but you're going to want to list those out from most important to least important. And then once you have that done, then what you're going to do is whenever a paycheck comes in, you're going to start with that first item on the list and you're going to pay that. And then if you have any money left over, pay the next thing and so on down the line. Each time you get paid, you start paying the next things on the list. And that will eventually get you through the month. And it's a little weird to get started on that at first. It's kind of difficult to wrap your head around at first. But if you have the income that you say that you do, you have enough money to get by on, and you have enough, more than enough to pay your expenses, then you should be fine. It's just going to take you a little while to get used to wrapping your head around that and understanding how to do it. But once you've done that 2 or 3 months in a row, it gets a lot easier. It starts flowing. You start wrapping your head around it a lot better, and it just starts working. And you can manage your money much easier, much better when you're doing things that way. So I actually wrote a blog post a while back on how to budget when you have a variable income. So I'm going to leave you a link to that in the show notes. And it'll show you step by step how to get that done. And it's also going to show you or give you some free downloadable budgeting forms to help you get started. And that's going to get you on that path to being able to get all this under control and get things moving in the right direction. So now another thing you can do that will actually help you out and maybe smooth things out a little bit if you're still having trouble, try to see if you can get the due dates on your bills changed to suit your pay schedule. They used to not do that as much, but now these days a lot of utilities, a lot of other creditors will actually work with you on that, and they can change your due date so it'll coincide better with your bills, so you're not late on any payments and you're not stressing out about that. So I know it's very stressful when you have to do things that way, but if you can get those due dates changed, that's one thing that will help you out a ton. So okay, I hope this helps. Let's move on to the next question, and that will be from Rhonda. And Rhonda says, my husband and I are covered in debt. We make good money, but it all goes to debt, mainly credit cards. I don't know where to start. Please give me some ideas on how to get started. Okay, Rhonda, so you say you make good money, but it's all going to your debt. And unfortunately, you're in the exact same situation as literally millions of Americans. You make decent money, but you're living paycheck to paycheck. I can't tell you how often I get emails about this very thing, and it's just extremely common. In fact, the studies show that 2/3 of people can't come up with $400, just $400 to cover an emergency. And, that's a sad statistic. I mean, it's terrible. But it doesn't have to be that way. And what you have to do, you have to change the way that you manage your money. And you have to change your mindset and your habits. It's something that you can do. And especially if you're making good money, at least you're not spending more than you make. So at least I don't think you are. But even if you are, you can still turn this train around and get to the point where you're putting money in the bank, you're getting your debts paid quickly, and getting them out of your life. So the first thing, like I said, you got to change your mindset, and then you've got to change your habits. And the way you change your mindset is you start deciding, I don't want to be in debt anymore. I've had enough of this. It's not doing me any good. It's a burden in my life. The debtor is slave to the lender. And why in the world do you want to be a financial slave to someone else? So you've got to decide that first. Start changing the way you think about money, and start thinking about debt, and start working through that. Now you've also got to change your habits, and that means, as I recommend so many times around here on a daily basis, you've got to start doing a written budget. So that's the very first thing. And once you do that, you're going to know where your money's going. You're actually going to find out that when you start keeping track of your money and doing a proactive budget, and what I mean by that is you're planning your expenses out for the month. You're not looking back at what you spent last month. That's not a budget. That's just looking in the past. A really good, solid, proactive budget, it spends the money on paper before you spend it in the real life. And before you spend it in real life. And once you're doing that, you'll find that you're probably wasting some money in some areas. And so that's going to add some money back to your budget that you've been wasting, that you didn't know where it was going. And so that's one thing that's going to help you pay off your debt. So once you start doing a written monthly budget, then the next thing you need to do is start putting together a small emergency fund. Now, when you do that, you need to continue paying your debt. You're still paying your debt, but you only need to be paying minimum payments on your debt for now until you get that emergency fund built up. Because what that's going to do is that's going to act as insurance for you. That's going to protect you in case you have an emergency expense that comes up, because those emergencies are what tend to derail you from getting out of debt. And typically $1,000 in cash, whether it's in a bank account or whether you have it in an envelope in a safe in your house or a lockbox or whatever, keep that on hand. And that's going to allow you to cover most any general run-of-the-mill emergency that you have. So once you get that emergency fund together, that small emergency fund, then you're going to make a plan to get out of debt, and you're going to attack that debt like there's no tomorrow. So you're going to make a written plan to get out of debt. And I've written some blog posts that'll show you how to do that. And you're going to pay that debt off from the smallest debt to the largest debt. And some people call that the debt snowball. I like to call it the debt rocket, just another name for the same thing. I call it the debt rocket because just like a rocket lifting off the pad, it starts off very slowly. It takes a lot of energy to get moving, but once it gets moving, it keeps going up and up and up and accelerating until you're launched into the blue sky of debt freedom. And that's just my little metaphor for getting out of debt and the get out of debt process. So I'll leave links to all of these in the show notes for you. So the next thing you're going to do, once you get that debt rocket plan in place, you're going to eventually get all of your consumer debt paid off. And what I mean by consumer debt is basically everything but the house. You're going to get those cars paid off. You're going to get credit cards paid off, anything else you owe. If you have a boat payment or a ATV or anything else that you're paying on, you're going to get all that paid off except for the house. And then the next step, you're going to be completely out of debt except for the house at that point. That is awesome. And that is a great place to be. But there's still more work to be done. So the next thing you're going to do, once you get that consumer debt paid off, you're going to build a large emergency fund. And that means 3 to 6 months of expenses. And now why do you want to do that? Because that's more insurance against you having a major life crisis, financial crisis. And that will cover you in the event that you lose your job for some reason, or if you have a major health problem that requires you to be in the hospital and out of work for a while and can't make any money. And it's not 3 to 6 months of paychecks, but 3 to 6 months of your monthly expenses. And you'll be able to know what that is because you've been doing a budget. So, and now once you get that 3 to 6 months of expenses built up, then you're going to do things like attack that house debt. You're going to start putting money into savings and investments, and you're going to start building your wealth and paying off that mortgage debt that you have, if you have any. And that's where you're really going to start turning things around. You're going to start building wealth and making yourself richer and wealthier, and eventually go to the next step and be leaving a legacy for your family. So that's how you do it. And I've got links to how to do this in the show notes, and you'll be able to find that there. You'll be able to find blog posts that will cover the entire process. Also, even better, you can go and check out my Celebrating Financial Freedom online course. Now, the great thing about that is it will take you, it's got 16 modules that will take you step by step by step through this entire process and show you how to do it. And the great thing is that you'll also have access to me. You'll be able to answer questions, and I will get back to you in a private forum to where you can, any questions you have during the course, I can hold your hand through it and get you through the process. So don't miss out on that. It's a great way to finally get yourself on the road to getting out of debt. So go take a look at that. It's a great way to get yourself out of debt, to stop using all these credit cards and living paycheck to paycheck. And it shows you all kinds of wonderful things about how to change your mindset, how to change your habits. And again, every step it takes to get you on the road to getting out of debt permanently so you can leave a legacy for your family. You can build wealth, and you can never be a slave to the lender again. So now let's switch gears a little bit, and let's talk about our awesome sponsor, Personal Capital. And I believe one of the most important things you can do for yourself financially is to have a solid system for organizing your finances. And because most people, it's not an easy thing to do. It just doesn't come to people naturally. I know it didn't come to me, even though I'm a fairly organized person and I'm a natural saver. Still, I'm not as organized, or I wasn't as organized as I needed to be. And it's just hard to know where to start when you're managing your money. There are so many moving parts. It's difficult to figure it all out. So, in fact, being organized is one of the most frequent problems people tell me they have when it comes to their finances. I mean, there's just so much information. It can be just totally overwhelming. And that's where Personal Capital really does an awesome job. It's a really cool free tool you can use to get your finances more organized than you ever thought you could. And the best part about the whole thing is that it's really easy to use. It's an easy way to set up a customized personal dashboard that contains all your financial information in one place. In one simple dashboard, you can see everything from your investments, how much credit card debt you have, how much you owe on your car or cars, what your balance is on your mortgage, and any other financial information you need. I've even been able to enter in my rental house, and so it tracks the income I'm making from that. It tracks the value of my rental house, so that's pretty cool. And I've even been able to enter in other investments that I have that such as I've got a little bit of cryptocurrency, and I've got that entered in there. So even if you want to value your jewelry or art or anything like that, you can enter that in there and track that. So once you get it entered in, you only have to do that once, and it tracks it all for you. So it's really cool. So why is all this important? It's because when you know your entire financial situation, you can make better financial decisions. And better financial decisions ultimately means more money in your pocket. Now, I personally use Personal Capital to track my net worth and my investments, and it helps me get a clear picture of all the moving parts in my finances, since I can see everything in one place. So, if you want to finally get your finances working like a well-oiled machine, click the link in the show notes and sign up for your free Personal Capital account. It only takes just a minute to sign up and about 30 minutes or so to add your financial information and set up your own personal financial dashboard. You'll be amazed at the power of Personal Capital to help you manage your money better. All right, well, let's get on to the next question. And our next question is from Ryan. And Ryan says, I like your tip to not buy more house than you can afford. My wife and I are guilty of this. We live in a high cost of living area in Long Island, New York, and we have very average incomes at the moment. Our monthly mortgage is about 45% of our combined monthly take-home pay, and that means nearly half our income is going toward the mortgage before we account for any other expenses. And when all is said and done, we are just about able to pay all our expenses. But we can't really save anything for retirement without dipping into our savings. The bottom line, we don't make enough money. We have a young child, and I feel a lot of financial stress over this, probably more than my wife knows. I've just started to create a monthly budget to track expenses and hopefully improve our situation some. I also recently completed my master's degree in accounting, and I'm trying to obtain my CPA license to improve our financial situation in the very near future. I'm sure you get emails like this all the time, but do you have any suggestions you can offer me? So Ryan, okay, you talked about, let's say you live in a high cost of living area, Long Island, New York. Yes, that is a very high cost of living area. So you can expect to have housing expenses that are going to be more than the average. Now, what do I recommend as a good percentage of your income as a living expense? Well, I typically recommend keeping it under 30%, keeping your living expenses under 30% of your income. But in an area like that, Long Island, or even places like San Francisco or Chicago or places like that, that's hard to do. And you say your housing expense is about 45% of your income. So that's killing you financially. You can't save money and you're living paycheck to paycheck. You're stressed out, but the great thing is you say you're starting to do a budget. So that's awesome. And that is the number one thing you need to start doing first, because typically what that's going to do is, of course, it's going to help you see where your money's going. It's going to help you manage things in the right way. But typically that, in most cases, when you start doing that, you're going to find that frees up a few $100s a month that you were wasting. You didn't know where it was going. And so that's going to help you hopefully be able to put some money into savings. So that's the first thing you can do. And you say you're already doing that. So that is perfect. So what are some other things you can do to cut down on your housing expense? So let's go through a couple of things. And one of them is kind of extreme. You could sell the house and you could get into something cheaper. So I don't know what kind of a house you have, if it's bigger than you need, if it's too small for you already, who knows? You didn't really specify that. But that's one way that you can possibly cut down on your housing expense, is by maybe going to a smaller house, a house in a cheaper neighborhood. Maybe the house is just as good, but it's in a cheaper area. Or you could even move to a much cheaper area around the New York area. I don't know if there are any cheaper areas on Long Island, probably not, but maybe if you lived a little further out in New York State, somewhere like that, you might be able to cut your housing expenses some. But that's kind of an extreme move, and it could work for you, but you need to be very thoughtful about how you do that. So another thing you can do, you and or your wife can get a side gig to make some more money. And that would be a great way. If you're just earning a few $100s extra a month, you can put all that into savings and let that build over time, and that'll be your retirement investing. And that would be a great thing, especially if you and your wife both were doing that. Now, of course, you got to be careful. You don't want that to ruin your family life. It's a side gig is great for a short amount of time sometimes, but for a long period of time to get your house paid off, that might be a different story. So, but you might be able to find some easy ways that won't take a lot of your time to earn some extra money on the side that you can start putting into savings and growing that money. Get that into your retirement accounts, your 401k, your IRA, your Roth IRA, whatever you've got, and start doing that. And that is a great way to multiply your money. So the other thing you can do, and especially with the skills that you have in accounting and bookkeeping, even though you're not a CPA yet, you can do some bookkeeping on the side, some accounting. You don't have to be a CPA to do some accounting. But you can make several $100s in a short period of time doing that. So that's a great side gig to have for someone like you with that special skill. So your third option, you've got one more option that I came up with, and that is just keep toughing it out until you get your CPA license. And hopefully that's going to bump up your pay some. It's going to get you into a better paying career. And so that will help you out. And just the extra money you'll make as a CPA and in that career might solve the whole problem. So I don't know what you're making now versus what you'll be making as a CPA, but it certainly will help if you're making more money. But even if you do that, keep doing a budget anyway. That is something you need to do every single month for the rest of your life. So I hope these suggestions help. If you, the listeners, have any other suggestions for Ryan or Rhonda or Allison, leave a comment below the video. And I always like to see some suggestions that I might not have thought of, and I want to make this interactive, and I want our audience to help our other audience members out as well. So go ahead and leave comments and suggestions, and even and hopefully that can help everybody out. So that about wraps up everything for this episode of Ask Jason. I sincerely hope you came away with some information you can use to make your finances better. I've left links in the show notes to the blog posts and other resources that I mentioned in the show for you. And if you have a personal finance question that you'd like me to answer, simply shoot me an email at jasoncabler@cfinancialfreedom.com, and I'll leave that in the show notes as well. Or just leave a comment below asking your question, and maybe I'll answer your questions in the next episode. Until then, have a great week, be blessed, and remember, no matter your financial situation, when you walk with Jesus Christ, you are truly rich. I'll see you soon.